As 2020 comes to a close, we're looking back at the biggest stories in defense in the entire year. I welcome Oriana Pawlyk, air warfare reporter for military.com, and Sara Sirota, associate editor for Inside the Air Force. They've made their choices for the most important stories of the year. Oriana, I begin with you. The first story you chose was diversity in the Air Force. A lot included in that throughout this year, hasn't there been?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've had the historic nomination and confirmation of General Charles Q. Brown, who is the first Black service chief in the Air Force's history, and not just the Air Force's history, but the military's history overall. And, you know, that aside, in this year alone, I mean, General Brown was one of the first members of the Air Force, along with some of his counterparts, to really lead the service in a really frank discussion about the what had happened in Minneapolis with the death of George Floyd. And arguably, the service stepped out ahead of its counterparts when wanting to have airmen talk about how they felt about this, how this affected their service, and what it means to be a Black airman in the Air Force. And not just that aside, but, you know, it was a huge leap in technology this year as well, in addition to things like the discussion and also, you know, making tweaks and adjustments to, you know, the Air Force's song, like making gender neutral references instead of male only references. But the technological leap was really to create a diverse environment for women in the military. This year, we saw a huge leap in the technology of women's uniforms, to have more women be comfortable in the cockpit, and the adjustments made for more women to wear body armor that fits them for the first time, and that's decades in the making.
The importance of all of those changes that Oriana talks about, Sara, I think manifested itself a couple of weeks ago when we learned the Air Force is actually going to be able to reduce the retention bonuses that it pays because it doesn't need to retain as many people. It actually has more airmen than it needs for the coming year. Is it fair to characterize that, do you think, Sara, as a manifestation that these diversity initiatives are working because people want to stay in the force?
I would say so. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't follow the diversity issues as closely as Oriana does, but it's definitely been fascinating to watch this year. And as she mentioned, the nomination of General Brown has been significant. The Air Force is on its fourth female secretary, and it's been really fascinating and amazing to watch.
Oriana, a top enlisted person in the Air Force is a diversity landmark as well, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Chief Master Sergeant Bass is also the first female to hold the position. And again, it's one thing that happened ahead of the military's counterparts, something that the Air Force chose to lead as an example, to have the first Black service chief as well as his counterpart be a female. So, you know, when they're going around to bases across the Air Force, these are the faces that you see. These are the airmen that, as former secretaries and chiefs have said, you can't be what you can't see. And finally, you have people in these positions where they can be what they see.
Sara, you chose the Advanced Battle Management System as your #1 story of the year, and the ABMS is significant because it lays the groundwork for the Joint All-Domain Command and Control System that every branch of the military is using. Why'd you choose ABMS as #1?
I think just in terms of how much it's supposed to revolutionize the technology of the military, the Air Force is really taking the lead on this advanced battle management system that Dr. Will Roper has been leading. As you said, it's intended to achieve joint all-domain command and control, whereby military platforms sort of serve as nodes on this shared network, and are able to share data across this common network seamlessly, and it would really change things up for the military. They've been holding periodic demonstrations of this shared network where they invite industry members, different combatant commands, different platforms in the military, and they demonstrate the shared network. And a few months ago, they had what the Air Force called potentially the largest joint experiment or demonstration in recent history, in partnership with Northern Command and scores of different industry teams and government teams. It's been really fascinating to watch this year, especially the debates on Capitol Hill about the Advanced Battle Management System. There's been some skepticism from lawmakers about the non-traditional way the Air Force is doing this program. Instead of sort of laying out basic requirements from the get-go like they would with your traditional programs, they are sort of taking a DevSecOps-like approach to software development in the way that they handle this. The Government Accountability Office has been fairly skeptical that there would be unnecessary costs and schedule delays. But Dr. Roper and the Air Force leadership has really been pushing ahead with this and championing it. So yeah, it's been a huge story this year for me to follow.
Given that this is so closely attached to Dr. Roper's name and that he will not be in office January 20th at noon, is it reasonable to assume that the memorandum of understanding with General Brown and General McConville regarding the Army and statements the Navy has made recently that it is signing on to JADC2, is that enough for this to expect to continue into the Biden administration, Sarah?
Yeah, so this is something I've spoken with some industry partners about. They feel that the need for JADC2 and ABMS is so ingrained in the culture of the military that it will continue regardless of who replaces Dr. Roper if he leaves in January. And with the incoming Biden administration, the names that are floated around to take over the leadership of the Defense Department are people that industry members and members of the Air Force who I speak to are very confident would continue with this mission. So I think that it'll keep going forward from what I can tell.
Sara Sirota, Oriana Pawlyk, thanks very much for joining me. Thank you.